Kusum. It was about a year ago. One day in the evening, I was going for a walk when I met Mr. Naveen. He is an old friend of mine, very informal and playful. He has a house in Agra, and he is a good poet. I have attended his poetry gatherings many times. I have never seen such a devotee of poetry. His profession is advocacy, but he is deeply immersed in poetic contemplation. He is a very intelligent man. When a case comes before him, he gets to its bottom. That is why sometimes he gets cases, but outside the court, discussing court or cases is forbidden for him. Inside the courtroom, for 4 or 5 hours, he is a lawyer. As soon as he steps outside the courtroom walls, he is a poet from head to toe. Whenever you see him, a group of poets is gathered, discussing poetry, listening to compositions. He sways joyfully, and while reciting his own composition, a sort of deep concentration comes over him. His voice is so sweet that his verses pierce straight into the heart like arrows. His poetry is characterized by creating sweetness in spirituality, showing beauty in the formless within the form. When he comes to Lucknow, he usually informs me beforehand. Today, seeing him suddenly in Lucknow, I was surprised. How come you're here? Everything all right? You didn't even inform me of your arrival. He replied, brother, I am caught in a mess. I didn't have time to inform you. Moreover, I consider your home my own. What's the need for formality that you make special arrangements for me? I have come to trouble you with an urgent matter. Postpone your walk for now and come listen to my story of calamity. I said anxiously, you've made me worried. You and a story of calamity. I am extremely anxious. Let's go home, I'll tell you once I am calm. Are your wife and children well? Yes, they are all well. It's not about them. Then let's stop by a restaurant for a snack. No, brother, I'm not in the mood for a snack at the moment. We both headed towards the house. After reaching home, I had him wash his hands and face, gave him some sherbet, and after chewing some cardamom-flavored betel leaf, he began telling his story of calamity. You attended Kusum's wedding. You had seen her even before that. I believe that she possesses all the qualities needed to attract a simple-hearted young man. What do you think? I responded promptly, I am a bigger admirer of Kusum than you are. I have never seen a girl so modest, skillful, well-mannered, and playful. Mr. Naveen, in a sorrowful tone, said, that same Kusum is now on the verge of death, crying due to her husband's cruel behavior. It has been a year since her marriage. In this time, she went to her in-laws' house 3 times, but her husband doesn't speak to her at all. He is disgusted by the sight of her. I tried very hard to bring them together for a reconciliation, but he neither comes nor replies to my letters. I don't know what happened, but he has turned his back on her with such cruelty. Now I hear that his second marriage is about to happen. Kusum is in a terrible state. You probably wouldn't even recognize her if you saw her. All she does is cry, day and night. You can imagine our distress from this. All our life's hopes have been shattered. God didn't give us a son, but we were content with our Kusum and considered ourselves fortunate. We raised her with so much love and care, never even touched her with a flower stem. We didn't leave anything out in her education. She didn't pass her BA, but in terms of maturity of thoughts and knowledge, she is not less than any highly educated woman. You've read her writings. I believe very few women can write like her. On subjects of society, religion, and ethics, her thoughts are very refined. She is so adept at debating that I am often astonished. She is so skilled in household management that nearly the entire management of my house was in her hands. But in her husband's eyes, she isn't worth even the dust under his feet. I repeatedly ask her, did you say something to him? What's the matter? Why is he so indifferent to you? And in response, she just cries and says, he never spoke to me. I believe that from the very first day, something went wrong between them. Perhaps he came to Kusum and asked her something, and out of shyness, she didn't respond. Maybe he said a few more things, and Kusum didn't raise her head. You know how shy she is. And that's probably when her husband took offense. I can't even imagine how a man could be indifferent to a girl like Kusum. But what can one do in the face of bad luck? Poor Kusum wrote several letters to her husband, but that heartless man didn't respond to even one. He returned all the letters. I don't know how to soften his stone heart. I can't bring myself to write to him. Please, you save Kusum's life, or soon, her life will end, and we two parents will also die along with her. I can't bear to see her suffering anymore. Mr. Naveen's eyes filled with tears. I too was deeply distressed. Comforting him, I said, "You've been worrying about this for so long. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I'll go to Moradabad today itself and deal with that boy in such a way that he won't forget. I'll drag him here by force and make him fall at Kusum's feet." Smiling at my confidence, Mr. Naveen said, "What will you say to him?" "Don't ask that. I'll try every charm I know. You won't succeed. He is so well-mannered, so polite, so cheerful, so sweet-spoken, that you'll return as his admirer. He will stand before you with folded hands, and all your harshness will melt away. There's only one solution for you. You have magic in your pen. You've guided many young men towards the right path. It is your duty to awaken the dormant humanity in his heart. I want you to write such a heart-wrenching, soul-stirring letter on behalf of Kusum that he feels ashamed and his feelings of love are rekindled. I will be forever grateful to you." Mr. Naveen is, after all, a poet. In this suggestion, there was more poetry than reality. "You've read some of my stories and cried, so you believe that I can make any heart dance to my tune like a clever snake charmer. You don't know that not all men are poets, and not all are equally emotional. The stories that made you cry made many others toss the book aside in disgust. But this wasn't the time for such talk. He would think that I was trying to avoid the matter, so I said kindly, "You've come up with something far-fetched. But I agree with the idea, and though you've exaggerated my ability to evoke emotions, I won't disappoint you. I will write the letter and will do my best to awaken that young man's sense of justice. But if you don't mind, first show me the letters that Kusum wrote to her husband." He returned them, and if Kusum hasn't torn them up, they should still be with her. By reading them, I'll be able to see what aspects still need to be addressed. Mr. Naveen pulled out a bundle of letters from his pocket, placed them before me, and said, "I knew you'd want to see these letters, so I brought them along. Read them at your leisure. Kusum is as much my daughter as she is yours. What's there to hide from you?" The letters were written on fragrant, pink, glossy paper in very beautiful handwriting. I began to read. "My lord, it has been a week since I arrived here, but I haven't had a moment's rest. Every night passes with me tossing and turning. I keep thinking over and over, what offense did I commit that you are punishing me like this? Scold me, rebuke me, curse me, if you wish, even pull my ears. I will gladly accept all these punishments, but I can't bear this cold indifference. I stayed at your home for a week. God knows what hopes and dreams I had in my heart. I wanted to ask you many things, to seek your forgiveness for my offenses, but you avoided me like a shadow. I never got the chance. You must remember, when the entire household used to nap in the afternoon, I would go to your room and stand there with my head bowed for hours, but you never even looked at me. You probably can't imagine what was going on in my mind at that moment, but unfortunate women like me can understand. I had built a heaven of happiness in my imagination, listening to the stories of my friends' wedding nights, but you destroyed it so mercilessly. I ask you, don't I have any rights over you? Even in court, when a criminal is sentenced, they are charged with a crime, witnesses are called, and their testimony is heard. But you didn't ask me anything. If I had known my fault, I would have been careful for the future. I would have fallen at your feet and begged for forgiveness. I swear by God, I don't know why you are upset with me. Perhaps the qualities you wished to see in your wife are not in me. I certainly didn't study English, I am not familiar with English society's customs, nor do I know how to play English games. I probably have many other shortcomings. I know I wasn't worthy of you. You deserved a more beautiful, more capable, more intelligent wife than me. But my lord, punishment should be given for crimes, not for shortcomings. I am ready to follow your every command. Just encourage me a little, and you will see how quickly I make up for my deficiencies." Your love and care will ignite my beauty, sharpen my intellect, and strengthen my destiny. I will be transformed by this blessing. My Lord, have you thought about who you are angry with? This helpless woman, who is lying at your feet, begging for your forgiveness, who is your servant for life, can she bear this anger? My heart is very fragile. If you make me cry, what will you gain except regret? One spark from this fire of anger is enough to burn me to ashes. If it is your wish that I die, then I am ready to die. I only seek your command. If my death will bring you peace, I will happily lay my life at your feet. But I can't help but say that, despite all my flaws, I have one virtue. I claim that no other woman can serve you as well as I can. You are wise, generous, and a scholar of psychology. Your servant stands before you, begging for mercy. Will you reject her at the door? Your offender. Kusum. Reading this letter gave me chills. It was unbearable to think that a woman could be forced to plead with her husband in this way. If a man can remain indifferent to his wife, why can't the wife reject him too? That heartless man thinks that marriage has made a woman his slave. He can do whatever he wants to her, and no one can stop him. A man can marry a second, third, or fourth time and still rule over a wife he has nothing to do with. He knows that women are bound by the honor of their families and that they have no option but to cry and die. If he feared that a woman could retaliate, even with a slap, he would never dare to act so arrogantly. Poor women are so helpless. If I were in Kusum's place, I would have responded to this cruelty with 10 times more harshness. I would crush him underfoot without a care for the world's opinion. The world sees so much injustice towards women and says nothing. I wouldn't care at all about its tears or laughter. Oh, miserable young man. Don't you realize how cruelly you are cutting your future's throat? This is the time when a man must fulfill not only the love needs of his wife but also those of her parents, siblings, and friends. If a man doesn't have the strength for this, how will he satisfy his wife's hungry soul? The result will be the same as it often is. The woman will wither away and die. This is the time that creates lifelong sweet memories. A wife considers her life fulfilled if she receives her husband's love and, with this love as her foundation, she can endure all of life's hardships with a smile. This is the time when spring blooms in the heart, and new hopes bud. Who would be so heartless as to cut down this tree in such a season? This is the time when a hunter captures a bird from its nest and cages it. Can he hope to hear its sweet song while holding a knife to its neck? I began reading the second letter. My life's treasure. After waiting 2 weeks for a reply, I am writing to give you the same reproach again. When I wrote that letter, my heart told me that I would definitely get a reply. Against all odds, I was still hoping. Even now, my heart refuses to believe that you deliberately didn't respond. Perhaps you didn't have time, or God forbid, you may have fallen ill. Just the thought of this makes my heart tremble. I pray to God that you are well and happy. If you don't write to me, that's fine. I will cry and stay silent. But for the sake of God, if you are in any distress, please write to me immediately, and I will come with someone. I feel suffocated by the constraints of tradition and propriety. If you keep me away from serving you in such a situation, then you are taking away the most valuable thing in my life. I don't ask for anything else from you. Feed me the coarsest food, clothe me in the roughest fabric, and I won't complain. I will be happy with you even in the direst of circumstances. I have no desire for jewelry, no desire to live in a mansion, no desire for entertainment, no desire to amass wealth. My life's purpose is to serve you. That is its goal. For me, there is no God, no guru, no ruler, except for you. You are my God, my King. Don't push me away from your feet, don't reject me. I have come with flowers of service and love, with the offering of duty and vow. Let me lay these flowers at your feet. The devotee's job is to worship. It's not for her to wonder whether the deity accepts her worship or not. Mike Round 1. Perhaps you don't know what state I am in these days. If you knew, you wouldn't treat me with such cruelty. You are a man, you have compassion, sympathy, and generosity. I can't believe that you would be angry with someone as insignificant as me. I am deserving of your mercy. How weak, how crippled, how voiceless I am. You are the sun, I am a speck. You are fire, I am straw. You are a king, I am a beggar. Anger should be directed at equals. How can I, who am so far beneath you, bear the brunt of your anger? If you think I am not worthy of serving you, then give me a cup of poison with your own hands. I will take it as nectar, place it upon my head, and drink it with my eyes closed. Once my life belongs to you, whether you choose to kill me or spare me is up to you. I will be content knowing that my death has relieved you. All I know is that I am yours, and I will remain yours not just in this life, but forever. Unfortunate. Kusum. After reading this letter, I started to get annoyed with Kusum and felt disgust for that boy. Sure, you're a woman, and according to today's customs, a man has every right over you. But is there no limit to humility? A woman should also stop caring for a man like this. By teaching women about religion and sacrifice, we have destroyed both their self-respect and self-confidence. If a man doesn't need a woman, why should a woman need a man? God gave hands to men, but did he not give them to women? Men have intelligence, but are women unintelligent? This humility has inflated men's egos. If a man gets upset, it's as if a woman's world comes to an end. I believe that if I were in Kusum's place, I would have crushed this arrogance tenfold. I wouldn't care at all about the world's judgment. Society sees so much oppression of women, yet it remains silent. I wouldn't give a thought to whether society cries or laughs. Oh, miserable young man. Don't you realize how you are cruelly ruining your future? This is the time when a man must not only love his wife but also fulfill the love needs of her family and friends. If a man can't do this, how will he satisfy his wife's hungry soul? The outcome will be the same. The woman will die slowly in agony. This is the time that creates lifelong sweetness in memories. A wife's love is so intense that she considers her life successful just by receiving her husband's affection. With this love as her foundation, she can endure all of life's hardships with a smile. This is the time when spring blooms in the heart and new hopes sprout. Who would be so heartless as to cut down this tree in its prime? This is the time when a hunter captures a bird from its nest and cages it. Does he hope to hear its sweet song while holding a knife to its neck? I began reading the third letter. Beloved, now I realize that my life is meaningless. Why should a flower bloom if no one will see or pluck it? Should it only bloom to wither and fall to the ground, to be trampled underfoot? I came to your house a second time, stayed for a month, but never once saw you. It was my father-in-law who invited me and my father-in-law who bid me farewell. During this time, you didn't give me even a glimpse. You would come home 20 times a day, chat with your siblings, or go out with friends, but you seemed to have taken a vow never to come near me. I sent many messages, begged and pleaded, even shamelessly came to your room many times, but you never once raised your eyes to look at me. I can't even imagine how anyone could be so heartless. Am I not worthy of love, trust, or even service? Am I not worthy of pity? That day, I made rasgullas for you with so much effort and love. You didn't even touch them. When you are so indifferent to me, I wonder what the point is of staying alive. I don't know what hope keeps me alive. It's so unfair that you punished me without telling me my crime. What kind of justice is this? Do you know that in this 1 month, I've barely eaten 10 meals at your house? I've become so weak that I see darkness before my eyes when I walk. It's like there's no light left in my eyes, no circulation of blood in my heart. Fine, keep torturing me as much as you want. This injustice will end one day. Now I only pin my hopes on death. I feel that upon hearing of my death, you'll jump with joy and breathe a sigh of relief. You won't even shed a tear, but that's not your fault. It's my misfortune. I must have committed some great sin in my past life. I want to be indifferent to you as well, to turn away from you just as you have turned away from me. But for some reason, I don't have the strength to do that. Can a vine stand alone like a tree? A tree doesn't need support, but how can a vine find that strength? It was born to cling to the tree. If you separate it from the tree, it will wither. I can't even imagine my existence without you. Every action of my life, every thought, every desire, is centered around you. My life is a circle, and you are its center. I am a garland, and you are the thread that runs through every flower. Without that thread, the garland will scatter, and the flowers will be trampled into dust. I have a friend, Shano. She got married this year. When her husband comes to visit, Shano's feet don't touch the ground. She seems to take on 100 different forms in a single day. Her face blooms like a lotus. She is so full of joy that she can't contain it. She scatters it around for unfortunate souls like me. When she comes and hugs me, I feel drenched in the downpour of her joy and excitement. Both husband and wife are madly in love with each other. They have no wealth, no property, but they are happy in their poverty. One moment of their love, what could be compared to that? I know that these carefree, joyful times won't last forever. Life's worries and disappointments will catch up with them as well, but these sweet memories will stay with them like stored treasure until the end. Dry bread soaked in love, coarse clothes colored with love, and a tiny, love-filled room, all of this holds a taste, a beauty, and a peace that perhaps even the gods don't experience in heaven. When Shano's husband leaves for home, she cries so bitterly that my heart melts. When his letters arrive, it's like she's received some great blessing. Even in her tears, her disappointments, and her complaints, there is a sweetness, a joy. Her tears are full of yearning and excitement, while mine are full of despair and sorrow. Her yearning holds anticipation and joy, while mine holds misery and helplessness. Her complaints come from a place of authority and affection, while mine come from brokenness and sorrow. This letter is getting long, but my heart's burden isn't getting lighter. It's terribly hot. Father is thinking of taking me to Mussoorie. He suspects that I have tuberculosis because of my weakness. He doesn't know that for me, even heaven is a prison. Unfortunate. Kusum. My stone-hearted God. I returned from Mussoorie yesterday. People say it's a very healthy and beautiful place, and maybe it is. But I didn't leave my room for even a single day. For those with broken hearts, the world feels empty. Last night, I had a very pleasant dream. Shall I tell you? But what's the point? I don't know why, but I'm still afraid of death. The thin thread of hope still ties me to life. How painful it is to reach the gate of the garden of life and be turned back without entering. What beauty, what joy is there inside? But for me, the gate is closed. I wonder if, when I die, you will shed 2 drops of tears over my corpse? The woman whose life you took responsibility for, whose hand you held for life, will you not show her at least this kindness? Everyone forgives the dying. Will you also forgive me? Bathe my body with your own hands, apply sindoor to my forehead, put bangles on my wrists, pour the holy water of the Ganges into my mouth, and carry me on your shoulder for a few steps. That's all I ask. My soul will be content, and it will bless you. I promise to sing your praises in the court of the Lord. Is that too high a price? With this small courtesy, you'll be freed from all your responsibilities. Ah, if I could believe that you would do this much for me, I would welcome death with joy. But I won't wrong you. You may be heartless, but you're not that cruel. I know that as soon as you hear this news, you'll come, and perhaps for a moment, your eyes will shed a tear for my death. If only I could witness that moment in my lifetime. Alright, may I ask you a question? Don't be angry. Has some other fortunate woman taken my place? If so, congratulations. Send me her picture. I'll worship her, bow at her feet. She received the blessing from the God whom I couldn't please. Such a fortunate woman's feet should be washed and the water drunk. I sincerely wish that you live happily with her. If I can be of any service to her, directly or indirectly, I will be honored. Just tell me her blessed name and whereabouts, and I will run to her. I will say, Goddess, I am your servant, because you are my husband's beloved. Give me refuge at your feet. I will lay a bed of flowers for you, fill your hair with pearls, and paint your heels with henna. This will be the purpose of my life. Don't think that I'll be jealous. Jealousy happens when someone takes away what's yours. Since I never had the fortune of calling you mine, why should I feel jealous? I had much more to write, but the doctor has arrived. Poor man thinks my heartache is tuberculosis. Tormented by sorrow. Kusum. These 2 letters filled the cup of my patience. I am not a very emotional man. Sentimentality doesn't touch me. Like most artists, I am not easily moved by words. I often question whether something comes from the heart or is written just to evoke feelings, and this often interferes with my literary enjoyment. But these letters pushed me beyond my limits. At one point, my eyes really did fill with tears. How painful was the thought that the same girl, on whom her parents showered love, should become so tormented after marriage. Marriage, it seemed, was her funeral pyre, or the document sealing her death. There's no doubt that such marital tragedies are rare, but given the current state of society, their possibility remains. As long as men and women don't have equal rights, such tragedies will continue to occur. Perhaps it is the nature of living beings to oppress the weak. People stay away from biting dogs, but children throw stones at the gentle dog for fun. If you have 2 servants of the same rank, they will never fight, but as soon as you make one a superior and the other a subordinate, the superior will assert dominance over the subordinate. The foundation of a happy marriage can only be laid on equality of rights. I doubt that love can truly exist in such inequality. What we call love between men and women today is the same love that a master has for his pet. As long as the pet works obediently, the master will feed and pamper it, even dress it in ornaments. But if the pet slows down even slightly or turns its head the wrong way, the master's whip will fall on its back. That's not love. I opened the 5th letter. As I expected, you didn't reply to my last letter either. This clearly means that you have decided to abandon me. So be it. For a man, a woman is just something to walk over, but for a woman, a man is like a god, even greater than a god. As soon as her conscience awakens, she begins imagining her husband. I did the same. When I used to play with dolls, you entered my inner world as the doll's groom. I washed your feet, offered you garlands and flowers, and welcomed you with devotion. Later, when I developed a taste for listening to and reading stories, you came into my heart as the hero of those stories. I gave you a place in my heart. From childhood, you were present in my life in some form or another. Those feelings reached the deepest corners of my soul. Every atom of my being is woven with those feelings. It's not easy to pull them out of my heart. It will break me apart. But if this is your wish, so be it. I was ready to do anything in your service. Forget about hardship and poverty, I was even willing to give up my life. The goal of my life was to dissolve myself in your service. I abandoned my shame and hesitation, trampled on my self-respect, but you still won't accept me. I am helpless. You are not to blame. I must have done something that made you so hard-hearted. You don't even deem it appropriate to speak of it. I was ready to bear any punishment except this cruelty. I would have gladly taken the cup of poison from your hands and drunk it, but fate has taken a different course. I was hesitant at first to accept that a woman is a servant to a man. I thought of her as his companion, his equal half, but now my eyes have been opened. I read in a book some days ago that in ancient times, women were treated as property, like cattle or land. A man had the right to sell her, mortgage her, or even kill her. Marriage was just a ritual where the groom's party, armed with soldiers, would come and carry off the bride. Along with the bride, they would seize whatever money, grain, or livestock they could find at her home. The man would take the woman to his house, shackle her feet with chains, and lock her inside. To crush her sense of dignity, she was taught that her husband was her god and that marital bliss was her greatest virtue. Thousands of years have passed, but that mindset hasn't changed in men. The old customs still exist, though perhaps in a more refined form. Now I understand how beautifully that writer described the condition of women. So, I make one last request of you, my final request. Please return my letters. The jewelry and clothes you gave me are of no use to me now. I have no right to keep them. Send for them whenever you wish, they are packed away in a box with an inventory list, which you can check. From today onwards, you will hear no complaints from me. Don't think for a moment that I will ever betray you or act disloyally. I will live here, slowly wasting away, but I will never bear ill will toward you. The environment in which I was raised teaches me that a woman's most fundamental duty is reverence for her husband. Even jealousy or bitterness can't uproot this feeling from my heart. I am the guardian of your family's honor. I will never disgrace that trust, not while I'm alive. If it were in my power, I would return that honor to you too, but in this, both you and I are powerless. My only prayer to God is that wherever you are safe and well. The most bitter experience of my life is that a woman's life is wretched. It is wretched for herself, for her parents, and for her husband. She is valued neither in her parents' house nor in her husband's. My home has turned into a place of mourning. My mother weeps, my father weeps, and the rest of the family grieves. People must be thinking that it would have been better if this girl had never been born. But no matter how many people are against me, they can't defeat you. You are my Lord, and your decision is final. There's no appeal or complaint against it. Well, from today, this chapter ends. Now it's just me and my broken, shattered heart. My only regret is that I couldn't serve you. The unfortunate Kusum. I don't know how long I sat there in silent grief before Mr. Naveen asked, "What have you decided after reading these letters?" With a heart overwhelmed by sorrow, I said, "If these letters haven't melted that demon's heart, what effect will my letter have?" There is no emotion or grief left that hasn't been touched in these letters. Kusum has left no aspect unaddressed: pity, shame, scorn, justice. My only course of action now is to confront that scoundrel face to face and try to get to the bottom of this problem. If he doesn't give me a satisfactory answer, I'll either spill his blood or my own. Either I'll be sent to the gallows, or he'll be shipped off to the Andaman Islands. The patience and courage Kusum has shown is commendable. Please comfort her. I will take the night train to Moradabad and inform you of the situation as soon as I know more. To me, this boy seems either characterless or witless. I rambled on in my frenzy. After this, we both had dinner and went to the station. He left for Agra, and I took the train to Moradabad. He was still anxious that in my anger, I might do something rash. It took a lot of effort to calm him down. I arrived in Moradabad early the next morning and began my investigation. My suspicions about the boy's character were unfounded. In his neighborhood, at college, and among his friends, everyone praised him. The darkness around this mystery seemed to deepen. In the evening, I went to his house. The simplicity with which he ran to touch my feet, I can never forget. I have never seen a young man so eloquent, well-mannered, and polite. The contrast between his outward appearance and inner nature was like night and day. After a few pleasantries, I asked, "I am pleased to meet you, but tell me, what crime has Kusum committed that you are punishing her so severely? She has written several letters to you, and you haven't responded to a single one. She's even visited here 2 or 3 times, but you didn't speak to her. Isn't this an injustice toward that innocent girl?" The young man, looking ashamed, replied, "It would have been better if you hadn't asked this question. It's very difficult for me to answer. I left it to your judgment, but to clear up this misunderstanding, I am compelled to speak." Saying this, he fell silent. By this time, insects of all kinds had gathered around the electric light. Several crickets jumped onto the table and buzzed in my face, as if showing off their victory over me before flying away. A large bug also sat on the table, seemingly preparing to leap. The young man brought a fan and placed it on the table, driving the victorious insects away, showing them that humans are not as weak as they might think. In a moment, the battlefield was cleared, and there were no further interruptions to our conversation. The young man, hesitating, said, "Perhaps you'll think I'm very greedy, mean, and selfish, but the truth is, this marriage did not fulfill the dream that is dearer to me than life. I didn't want to get married, I didn't want to shackle myself. But when Mr. Naveen insisted and his words gave me hope that he would support me in every way, I agreed. However, after the wedding, he never even bothered to ask about me. He didn't write to me, telling me when he would make arrangements for me to go abroad. Although I had expressed my wish to him beforehand, he chose to disappoint me. His indifference shattered all my plans. What's left for me now except to pass my LLB and spend my days struggling in court? I asked, so, what exactly do you want from Mr. Naveen? He has given you no reason to complain about money matters. Perhaps sending you abroad is beyond his means. The young man lowered his head and said, then he should have told me that from the beginning. Why would I have agreed to the marriage otherwise? No matter how much he has spent, what benefit has it brought me? Both sides have wasted 10 or 12,000 rupees, and along with it, my dreams have been buried in the dust. My father has gone into debt by several thousand rupees. He can't send me to England now. Couldn't Mr. Naveen have sent me to England? 10 or 5,000 rupees is nothing for him. I was stunned. Without thinking, I exclaimed, ugh. What a world. What a society. Such selfish creatures exist here, who, by putting a young girl's life in peril and pressuring her father, hope to achieve a higher status. It's not wrong to want to go abroad for education. If God has given you the means, go ahead. But to abandon your wife and force your father-in-law to bear the cost is the height of shamelessness. There would be pride in it if you went through your own efforts. But if you ride on someone's shoulders, sell your self-respect, what kind of success is that? In this fool's eyes, Kusum had no value at all. She was just a means to fulfill his selfish ambitions. To argue with such a low-minded person was pointless. Circumstances had placed our fate in his hands, and we had no choice but to bow before him. I caught the next train to Agra and relayed the entire story to Mr. Naveen. Poor Mr. Naveen had no idea that all the responsibility had been placed on his shoulders. Though the economic downturn had slowed his legal practice, and he couldn't easily afford 10 or 5,000 rupees, if the boy had at least hinted at this, Mr. Naveen would have made some arrangement. After all, who else was there in his life besides Kusum? He had no clue what was going on. So, as soon as I told him the situation, he exclaimed, ugh. This good man has blown this trivial matter out of proportion. You write to him today, telling him he can go wherever he wants to study. I'll take on the entire burden. For a whole year, that heartless man made Kusum suffer. This matter was discussed in the household. Kusum heard about it from her mother. It became known that a check for 1,000 rupees was being sent in her husband's name, as if to perform some sort of ritual to lift a curse. Kusum furrowed her brows and said, Mother, tell father not to send the money. Her mother, astonished, looked at her daughter. What money? Oh, that. Why? What's wrong with it? If the boy wants to study abroad, why should we stop him? After all, the money is his too, in his name. We're not taking it with us to the grave. No, tell father not to send a single penny. But what's wrong with it? Because this is nothing short of extortion, the kind of robbery criminals commit. They kidnap someone and extort a hefty ransom from the family for their release. Her mother looked at her with disdain. What kind of talk is this, daughter? After all this time, the boy has finally come to his senses, and here you are provoking him again. Kusum, exasperated, said, it's better for such a god to stay angry. A man who is so selfish, so arrogant, so lowly, I cannot live with him. I'm telling you, if the money is sent, I will take poison. Don't take this lightly. I don't even want to see that man's face. Tell father, and if you are afraid, I'll tell him myself. I've made up my mind to live independently. Her mother saw that Kusum's face had flushed with anger, as if she didn't want to say or hear anything more on the subject. The next day, Mr. Naveen told me about this, and I rushed over and embraced Kusum. This is the kind of self-respect I want to see in women. Kusum did what I had in mind but didn't have the courage to express. It has been a year now, and Kusum hasn't written a single letter to her husband, nor does she mention him. Mr. Naveen has expressed a desire to bring his son-in-law home several times, but Kusum refuses even to hear his name. She has developed such firmness in her independence that it amazes me. Her face no longer shows the paleness of despair and suffering but radiates the glow of self-respect and freedom.